As we get ready to welcome 2023, we are looking back at some of the top stories of the year, and the death of Queen Elizabeth II was one of the biggest stories.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. We're joined now live by CTV's royal commentator, Richard Berthelsen. Richard, I was in the UK over the period of mourning and, of course, the state funeral for Queen Elizabeth II, and we talked to you a lot on this. So thanks again for doing that and for being here this afternoon. Let's talk now. We're a few months removed from the death of the Queen. King Charles III is now, reigning. What did you make of that period of time, as we sort of learned about the death of the Queen and then those sort of incredible, remarkable 2 weeks beyond that?
Well, of course, it was the event we'd all been expecting in one way, but always dreaded would happen. And I think some of us, including me, were deluding ourselves, although the signs were clearly there as the Queen's health declined throughout the last few months, particularly after the Jubilee, I think. It was really an incredible outpouring of emotion. As you know, I mean, every single time the Queen's coffin moved, whether it was from Balmoral to Edinburgh, Edinburgh to London, airports into the palace, there were thousands of people along the route. And of course, that extraordinary 250,000 people or more that queued up to see the Queen's coffin at Westminster Hall. So it was an incredible outpouring. Of course, at the same time we have that going on and all of the maximum amount of pageantry and pomp for the death of a reigning monarch, we have a new monarch starting his reign. And he was extremely active traveling around the kingdom, putting, making several really important speeches during that period of time to give the public a sense of how he sees his role and to reassure people going forward that things will largely remain in the way that Queen Elizabeth did.
And Richard, we are a few months out from that now, and things have kind of quieted for a while on the royal family. But once again, the spotlight is on the royal family in a way because Meghan and Harry released their documentary on Netflix, and everyone is talking about these episodes, which reveal their kind of love story, but also shines a pretty dark light on the royal family.
Well, I think it is, you can look at that documentary several ways. And of course, if you've been reading the British press at all, it's been dissected to the nth degree. Of course, a lot of people were interested in hearing from them, seeing snippets of their daily life, quite intimate pictures in some cases of the children in terms of, them running around, even them having a bath. In one case, I think there's a picture of Archie having his bath. So, it's really quite extraordinary in that way. At the same time, there's a lot of comments made in the documentary that, a lot of people wonder about the veracity of them. Maybe there might be other perspectives. Remember, this is a documentary strictly from one point of view, and those people invited to speak are taking their point of view. It's a real hit out at the British media in particular. They do suggest that the palace is in cahoots with the media at some point, and of course, several people in the media are pushing back and saying, "Oh, they can barely get an answer from the palace, much less being in cahoots." So I think there's a lot of skepticism that some of the things they say should be treated with. At the same time, it is extremely unfortunate and damaging for the royal family that this kind of argument comes out and detracts from their essential work. It tends to turn it into a bit of a soap opera when actually there's a serious purpose to what they're doing and their support of civil society and so many different causes as they go about their work.
So what about that, Richard, that sort of soap opera sideshow element to this? Like you said, like Queen Elizabeth II just had such a remarkable reign. She was so revered by so many, whether you were even, into the royal family or not, even in the UK. I mean, I spoke to a lot of people who said they didn't much care for the family, but they cared for the Queen, that they saw her as this mother figure. So King Charles III comes in, he's trying to sort of, take over and be the new monarch. But we'd already seen the polls knowing where he kind of stood on this. What kind of work do you think is ahead next year for the royal family? You've got the coronation coming up in May. How important is that going to be as they try to sort of right the ship and sort of change the balance of the sort of stories we're hearing?
Well, the King's actually been extremely active for people who follow closely. I mean, he has been everywhere and continuously, since the death of the late Queen. It's quite extraordinary and really picking up on a lot of different issues in the UK society, as has the Queen Consort, picking up some very important issues. There's no doubt the coronation is going to be a very important date in terms of setting a tone. How much pomp and ceremony do you have in an age we're living in? At the same time, people want to see that, as you know, because we saw, incredible public interest in the rituals around the death. the King's going to be facing two really key issues. Insofar as Canada is concerned, it's the role of the Crown in reconciliation. And he touched on a lot of that when he was in Canada last May for the royal visit while he was still Prince of Wales. And we're going to see, I think, a lot of calls for that. And we'll have to see how the royal family navigate that. At the same time, you know, the issues around the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade is going to pay very prominently, and how the royal family resolves sort of issues that have come up, you know, over the centuries, but even in the modern era are going to be big challenges for them. But I think if you look closely at what they've been doing over the last 4 months, you see there's a real interest in tackling head-on some of these issues. And I think we'll see a lot of that happen as we get beyond the coronation, which is really the next big stage for the family.
Yeah, it's just 5 months from now. I'm sure we'll talk to you between now and then. But in the meantime, CTV Royal Commentator Richard Berthelsen, appreciate the time this afternoon here on CP24 Live at noon.
My pleasure. Happy holidays to all.
To you as well.
Thank you.